Thank you for joining us and welcome. My name is Bob Hammersley. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of the St. Thomas and District Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, our Board of Directors and our members, and our colleagues at Rogers TV, it's my pleasure to thank you for joining us for this program. It's called Get to Know the Candidates, and that's our goal. Today we want to introduce and have you get to know the candidates who are running for the provincial election June 7th here in Elgin-Middlesex-London. Our agenda is straightforward. It's pretty straight and simple, actually. We're going to have opening remarks from each candidate. Each candidate's order of speaking has been determined by random draw as they arrived. We will also be hearing from a question panel, and we're fortunate to have with us two well-known individuals in our community, a former MPP and a former MP, Joe Preston and Steve Peters. You'll be hearing from them in just a moment as well. Our goal in terms of questions is to have as many as possible in the limited time that we have available. This program has a maximum endurance, I guess, of 2 hours. We will go for a minimum of 90 minutes, but it's up to the candidates and content and animation as to if we hit the program time limits or, well, we can't exceed them because somebody else needs this room, frankly. There is no limit to speaking responses for the candidates except off the top, 5 to 7 minutes. When you approach 6 minutes and 30 seconds, you will hear a sound, which sounds like... That's a 30-second warning. If you cross the 7-minute barrier, it gets louder, almost, and then the microphone gets shut off, and we'll ask you to adjourn and vacate the podium to the next speaker. When it comes to the question period, no firm rules, but I'm going to ask your cooperation in limiting your responses to 60 seconds. Now, that sounds like a short period of time, but if you were to sit and stare at a watch for 60 seconds, that's a fair, generous amount of time. So I'm not going to drive it hard, but I don't want to entertain someone as being a guest speaker as opposed to someone who's answering a question. So if we can play by those simple rules, I'll leave it to our question panel to run the show, and only if necessary will I put on the striped shirt and jump back in as referee. We flipped a coin at the beginning when Joe and Steve arrived to determine who would come forward first and speak on behalf of our question panel, and former MPP, Speaker of the Ontario Legislature, Steve Peters is up first. Steve, would you give us some opening remarks, please?
Great. Thank you very much, Bob, and good day, ladies and gentlemen watching. First and foremost, congratulations to the candidates. 99.99% of the people will never, ever do what you've done to put your name on a ballot, and that is to be commended. And I'm looking forward to asking you questions on a wide variety of issues. But my comments really, though, are more based initially at the audience. In 1971, over 75% of the population went out and voted. In the last provincial election, it was just a little over 50% of the population that voted. You know, we wear a poppy every November that remembers the men and women who gave their lives to give us this democracy that we enjoy in our country. And we've seen this awful trend downwards of voter turnout. And we need to find a way for you, the citizen, to get re-engaged. Some of you may sit at home and say, well, you know what? My vote doesn't matter. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Every vote matters. Every vote counts. I was involved in an election that I found out afterward that I won by 1 vote. So your vote does matter. Please get out and do that. I would say as well, too, to you that it's very easy to sit at home and complain and not like what one party is doing or another party is doing. But don't just complain. Get out and do something. I have a motto that I have had for a number of years, and that is, if you don't vote, don't complain. So ladies and gentlemen, get engaged in this election, particularly the young people, because we've seen a trend downward of my generation and my friends' children who are of the next generation, that the lack of interest. So congratulations to the candidates, but to you, the viewers, make sure you exercise your democratic right on June the 7th.
Well, thank you, Steve. I'd like to say the same thing. First of all, thank you to the Chamber for inviting us to come help today, too. It is an incredible piece. Service to one's community is above and beyond what most people do, as Steve has said. Thank you for putting your names forward. Thank you for coming here today to listen to us, and we're going to ask you a number of questions. But if I could say anything, the cooperation in all of you, you all came together for altruistic reasons to make Elgin-Middlesex-London a little better place to live. I hope that's your reason for running. There shouldn't be any other. I can refer back to when I first met Steve, and as the Member of Parliament and the Member of Provincial Parliament, Steve and I showed many of our colleagues how to best behave. We got a lot of things done in Elgin-Middlesex-London because we actually met once in a while and talked and enjoyed each other's company. We have different philosophies on things, and we always had. But what we could find was common ground. I asked the four of you to do the same. Find what you do believe in with each other. Be strong and adamant about the things that you would like to do different, but be kind and gentle about how we do it. Please dislike the policy, not the person. That's how it works. I spent a great deal of time in politics, as did Speaker Peters. I don't think either of us left with any enemies. We made a whole lot of friends while we were there. I ask you to do the same thing during this campaign. Please come out of it as friends. Come out of it as someone who will help the one who does actually get chosen by the public. But make friends as you do it. And as Steve had said, please get out and vote. It's important here in our province that we do play a role in picking who governs us. So we'll go on from there. Ready?
Let me borrow your microphone. It's easier than to, yeah. Brona Morgan drew lot number 1 in speaking, so we'll ask Brona to take the podium. Speaker number 2 will then be Carly Forsyth representing the Liberals. Jeff Urich, Ontario PCs, drew position 3, and Amanda Stratton for the NDP drew position 4. I'm not going to do introductions. That's up to you. You can tell everybody what you want them to know, maybe what you don't want them to know. But ladies and gentlemen, Brona Morgan.
I'm just going to close the lid of this computer because I think you can't see me behind it. Thank you very much, St. Thomas Chamber of Commerce, for organizing and hosting, and thank you very much to the media for bringing this to the public. Thank you for tuning in. Just to, I guess, build on what Joe said, I want to thank my fellow candidates. This is my second election here in Elgin-Middlesex-London, and I have to say, this riding and the candidates that I was involved with in the federal election and this time as well can really set an example for the way that we can do politics respectfully. These are the 2 campaigns that I can honestly say have been the most friendly and respectful and wonderful to be a part of, so that is a credit to all of the other candidates that I'm running with in this election. So I just want voters to know that you absolutely cannot lose regardless of the outcome of this election. You're going to get wonderful representation at Queen's Park. I also want to say a big thank you to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. I have spent some time over the last few days reading your Vote Prosperity platform, and I loved it. My number 1 favorite thing about it was the fact that greenhouse gas emissions and climate change came up right on the first page, which has spared me a lot of time as the Green Party candidate that I would sometimes have to put into trying to convince people that climate change is real. So thank you very much, Ontario Chamber of Commerce, for recognizing that and giving me this extra time to talk about the Green Party of Ontario, which I like to think of as the party for business. I'm just going to give you a moment to sit with that because I know you are kind of shocked, but let's just kind of get our minds around the idea that the Green Party of Ontario is the party for business. If you're a business person about 100 years ago and you said to yourself, I don't want to get involved with those newfangled automobiles. I really think the good money and the smart money is in horses and buggies, you wouldn't have gotten very far in business. We are faced right now with similar choices. Southwestern Ontario has been hit so hard by job losses over the last 2 decades. We can sit around and complain about those job losses, and we can wish for those jobs to come back. Or we can embrace the change that is offered by clean tech industries. The global clean economy is a $6 trillion opportunity, and it's trending upward. The smart money, on is on doing what's necessary to attract to this area businesses in clean tech innovation, advanced manufacturing, and bioproducts. Even if Ontario could achieve or bring in 1% of that $6 trillion, the results for our region would be incredible. What we're talking about here is well-paying jobs. There are already almost 300,000 people in Canada working in clean energy. The average salary for those positions is $92,000 a year. So these are good jobs that we're talking about. Southwestern Ontario, and particularly Elgin-Middlesex-London, is uniquely positioned to take advantage of this opportunity. We've got the real estate in place. We've got the people power available to put to work in clean tech industries. All we need is some powerful people in government that are going to put the policies, the legislation in place to attract those businesses back to this region. It's time to leap into the future with confidence and with a bold new vision for Ontario. We need to skate to where the puck is going, not where it's been. I am so proud to be representing the Green Party of Ontario under the leadership of Mike Schreiner. My name is Brona Morgan. I am your Green Party of Ontario candidate, the party for business, and I'm looking forward to telling you more about our platform and taking some questions. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and thank you, St. Thomas and District Chamber of Commerce, for inviting me here today, as well as those viewers at home. My name is Carly Forsyth, and I'm your provincial Liberal candidate for the riding of Elgin-Middlesex-London, and I'm proud to be here today to talk about our platform and about what we can do for business for Elgin-Middlesex-London. I was born and raised right here in St. Thomas, and I'm a very young, dedicated leader with a passion for governance, mental health support, equity, inclusivity, and a big supporter of a cleaner, healthier environment for the future of Ontario. As a former president of the Fanshawe College Student Union, I was known for getting things done. I introduced a new era of transparent governance to a multi-million-dollar corporation. Fanshawe College professors in this riding know the work I do and became members of the riding to support my efforts. Additionally, many in the riding have endorsed my candidacy. I love my community and have received a long list of awards, and most recently won the 2018 Fanshawe College President's Prize Award for my ongoing work and contributions to the community. My term on the Fanshawe College Board of Governors is nearing completion, but I am very proud of the work we have accomplished together. I have volunteered on many committees, including the London Cycling Advisory Committee, and fully support the Liberal investments in sustainable infrastructure for our area. I strongly believe that the youth of this community are worth fighting for. The Liberal plan has laid out several major investments, including expanding publicly funded prescription drugs through OHIP Plus to 1 in 2 people in Ontario, to making the largest mental health care investment in Canadian history, building a record amount of transit for us to get around, boosting hospital funding, and helping more people go to college or university with publicly funded tuition. That also lets more parents go back to work by funding preschool childcare from years of 2.5 all the way up to kindergarten. Ontario's economy is growing stronger, but that growth and the care and services, if funds, are at risk in this election. That is why I am here tonight, or today, and I believe in care over cuts. I have a track record for delivery, and I'm ready to lead and ready to listen. I am ready to be your voice at Queen's Park. I'm your candidate that believes in care over cuts. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Hurick for the Progressive Conservative candidate for Elgin-Middlesex-London. Served as the MPP for the last 7 years. Previously as pharmacist, and still am a business owner in St. Thomas. I feel like I've done a great job over the last 7 years as being the voice for all of Elgin-Middlesex-London. I had quite a few successes at the legislature and here at home at the riding. I was able to pass 2 private members' bills over the last 3 years, which is unheard of somebody sitting in opposition. Ryan's Law was passed, which allowed children to carry their inhalers at school at all times, provided their parents gave permission, and created a form for principals to keep a data on children with asthma and have emergency plans in place. I worked with the NDP and the Liberals, Ted McMeekin and Franz Jelena, to pass the Lung Health Act. Together, working with the three parties, we created a council that will give advice to the Minister of Health with regards to all lung health issues. Locally, we were able to work with area farmers and save the Glanworth Bridge. The Liberal government had chosen to knock down that bridge. However, it's a highway for our farmers. It keeps the large, heavy equipment off the roads and allows the farms to go east to west through our riding and get their work done at a quicker way. I was also able to work with the Liberal members, Community Social Services, to get the money for the violence against women's shelter that was built. I worked with the Minister of Community and Corrections with EMDC, where they instituted a 12-point plan to deal with the overcrowding. Together with area residents both here and in Chatham-Kent, we worked to ensure that the government is going to build that barrier on the Highway 401 that goes from Tilbury to Elgin. And I've again worked with the Dutton Dunwich folks who are being forced to take wind turbines, even though 84% of the residents have said no. I've stood up for the Dutton Dunwich at halting that project, and if a progressive Conservative government is elected, that project will be halted. I've also been a strong advocate for mental health in our community. We have services that are rationed, and people in Elgin County, especially our youth and children, have to go to London with months upon months wait for treatment. I've served as the health critic for the last 3 years and have learned quite a bit about the needs in our healthcare system. But more importantly, I feel like I have been a true representative of all the people in this riding. It doesn't matter who you voted for or what stripe of party you believed in. I sat down and listened with you and took your views to the legislature and helped each and every person that called my office. And I'm ready to do that again, because I do believe we're all members of a party. Our platforms are our plan, but so much happens outside of that platform that needs to be dealt with, and we don't need partisan politics to be involved in finding those solutions. And I commit to continue to do so, to represent everybody in this riding. Provincially, though, with regards to policy, we've seen a government overspend for 15 straight years, running deficit upon deficit, in which our debt has skyrocketed to $340 billion. As a result of that, $1 billion a month is spent on servicing the debt. So $12 billion a year is taken out of our revenue to service the debt. It doesn't go to any services. If you look at the three top ministries at the legislature, Ministry of Health spends about $54 billion, Ministry of Education around $26 billion, and then it's our debt payments around $12 billion. Debt payment, or interest payment, is higher than agriculture, post-secondary education, our social services, Ministry of Natural Resources. And each time we pile on the debt by running deficits, takes more money away from the services that we hold dear. The progressive government is going to work to running balanced budgets, getting our spending under control to live within our means, much like many businesses and households have to do throughout this area. We will clean up the hydro mess. We're going to reduce the cost of living, restore accountability and trust that has been lost in this government, bring back jobs to the riding, and we're going to end hallway health care. We're the only party that is committed to living within our means. The other platforms that are out there are going to be running deficits, building on our debt, which only hurts the services we depend on, which only hurts Elgin-Middlesex-London when we are forced to ration our care. I appreciate the time that I've had to be your representative. I hope I get your trust for another 4 years. I've truly enjoyed myself. I want to thank Steve and Joe, who are putting their time out again for our community to ask these questions, the Chamber Promise for being a leader, and Rogers Television for being here taping it. Thank you very much.
I'm Amanda Stratton. I'm your NDP candidate. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this opportunity to talk about business issues. It's been the focus of my work for several years. In fact, I've been a small business owner for most of my adult life, both as a freelancer and as a small employer. For the past several years, I've worked with other entrepreneurs and business leaders on exactly the question that the provincial government is tasked with, which is how do we create an environment that's supportive of business and supportive of business growth? I've done that work. One of the jobs I have had is with Startup Canada, which is a national nonprofit that operates entirely without government funding, to make every community in Ontario a great place to start and grow a company. I've done that by working with local entrepreneurs in various communities, working with local economic development teams, with public organizations, and with government. So this has been the focus of my work, and I'm very happy to have this opportunity to talk about it today. How do we make Elgin-Middlesex-London an even better place to start and grow a company? Small businesses are the backbone of our Ontario economy, and when small businesses grow, our communities flourish. The NDP will work together with small businesses in order to create an environment where good jobs will come back to support our local communities. I know, and the NDP knows, and the Ontario Chamber of Commerce has said as well, that businesses need to be in healthy communities in order to thrive. And the NDP has a plan that's about making life more affordable in our rural communities and in regions like ours, and about making every part of Ontario a place where you can build a good life by supporting healthcare, childcare, and infrastructure in those areas. We have a plan that's about encouraging density, reducing land speculation, and bedroom communities that aren't the greatest communities to thrive and grow a business in. And we know that actually you know what's best for your community, what your community needs to be more vital. So our $300 million Better Ontario Fund is about empowering people to do what they know will be great for their community, the way that works for their community. We're investing in bringing broadband to rural areas, and that's really important for business operations, but it's also really important to make our smaller communities an attractive place to live for young families and for young people, which in turn makes it an attractive place for talented employees. We're making utilities more affordable by bringing hydro prices down by 30% for the long term in a really sustainable way. During the cap and trade debates, the NDP proposed a direct cash rebate for rural communities and for trade-exposed industries. We weren't able to get that done under the Liberal government, but when we form government in June, we will dedicate 25% of cap and trade revenue to doing that so that trade-exposed industries aren't at such risk. We know that bringing down our greenhouse gas emissions and meeting our targets is really important for business, but that we need to do it in a way that's fair. When I talk with local entrepreneurs and local businesses, one of the issues I know we deal with a lot here is talent attraction. So one of the focuses of a lot of the investments I've already talked about is making the community more attractive for top talent, and also a better place to run your business. But I also know that our universal pharmacare and dental care plans will help to make Elgin-Middlesex-London a more competitive place for business to exist. When employees have those benefits provided to them in a way that they aren't going to lose when they transfer jobs, and when they're not concerned about the fact that they might not have benefits at a new employer, that makes it a lot easier for small and growing businesses to attract the top talent that they need. Also, our universal pharmacare plan, once it's implemented, the estimate is that it'll save the private sector about $800 million a year minimum, up to $1.9 billion potentially, and at a cost of significantly less for the public sector. It's also going to remove barriers to taking the leap into entrepreneurship. When I talk with people that have full-time jobs, but they also have a great idea that they want to turn into a business that's going to employ people, one of the key obstacles for them is losing their benefits. And it's not just for them. A lot of people would be happy to take that risk if it was just them, but they have families that they want to have benefits. And so our universal pharmacare and dental plans will make sure that people don't have to worry about that they can take that leap, that they can do it without also holding on to a full-time job, which really limits early growth. And so we can never make starting a company easy. We can never make it totally risk-free. It's just not. But the NDP government will create an environment where a lot of those barriers are removed for people that do want to do that and become employers in our community. We also know that businesses need transparency, they need predictability, and they need fairness from the government. The NDP government will first and foremost guarantee that there will be no shocks and surprises. There will be no changes without consultation. We will do whatever we can from the provincial perspective to make sure that your business's future, as far as the province controls it, is predictable for you. We'll overhaul the provincial support for small businesses and for medium-sized businesses to make it, first of all, simpler to access. because you shouldn't have to hire somebody in order to access funding that's supposed to help you hire somebody, which is unfortunately what a lot of companies have to do, but also to make sure that it's fair for every region of the province and for small businesses. What I hear from a lot of the people that I work with is that they have trouble accessing what they view as unfair programs that are disproportionately favoring large centers and large companies. We also know the main thing businesses need is customers. So the best way that Ontario can support the small business community in our province is by buying from it. Right now, Ontario spends about $6 billion a year on procurement. Our goal would be to make sure that 33% of that is going to small and scaling businesses in Ontario. We'll also work to make sure we have strong community benefits agreements so that when we're doing provincial infrastructure projects, local businesses are given the opportunity to participate in them and to benefit from them. There are already so many great things happening in Elgin-Middlesex-London. We have the Business Resource Centre, the Chamber of Commerce, the STEAM Centre. I was happy a few weeks ago to meet with someone who's opening a new co-working space in St. Thomas. There are so many great things that the community is doing, and the NDP is committed to stepping up to the plate and making sure that we're also doing the province's part to make Elgin-Middlesex-London a great place to start and grow a company. And I'm very happy to be here to talk about how we'll do that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to all of you for coming today and want to talk business with the Chamber of Commerce. This is fantastic. I'm going to leave my Chamber of Commerce hat on for most of the day, and I'm going to throw up a bit of a softball to begin with. So it's for everybody, and you know you are coming here to a Chamber of Commerce candidate discussion today. So what have you done in the last week to talk to small businesses before you came here to know what the issues are for small businesses out there? And I know we sent you a great package to read, but did you go talk to any small businesses and hear what they had to say? Toronto, I'll go with you and work the way down this time, and I'll try and change it up as we go.
Well, for the first time, I didn't even know that this event existed. We're on this camera, I guess?
Sure.
Yeah. I was at, just yesterday, I was at this thing called Business After 5. I didn't even know that this event happens, but apparently once a month, small businesses, entrepreneurs, like there was a police officer there were some car salesmen there, get together and just do this thing called casual networking, which was amazing, right? So I think sometimes this riding doesn't get the credit it deserves in terms of like the other ridings that have London in the name, about just how innovative the ideas and the businesses are down here. It blew my mind. So I run into one lady who is a contractor who basically will do any kind of paperwork that you want done anytime. And she'll just do it for like a couple of days, and then you never have to call her again. And so she's just there for you for taxes, for marketing, for anything that you want to do anytime. That is like a brilliant idea, especially for somebody like me who has a, kind of a small team and a small budget. So this is just a fantastic idea. I ran into another woman who has just started a personal training business in her backyard. So the place she rents, and she's got the big tires that you flip over now. And it's just, there is so much going on in this area, and I just really want to see people getting that message out there more. It's fantastic down here. Every time I come, I love to visit.
Perfect. Thank you for that question. So our office is actually located on Talbot Street at the intersection of Talbot and Flora. So Talbot Street is St. Thomas's hub for small business and entrepreneurship, and we're actually right next door to a small business that I've been in multiple times. It's a really fantastic store. It's actually called Myrtle. So we've actually had discussions about the minimum wage increase with the local shop owner, and she's actually in favor of the $15 an hour minimum wage for her employees, as she believes that by paying a $15 minimum wage, or in her case a wage that was already higher than minimum wage, that employees will feel less stressed over money and living conditions while working, and will also reduce turnover, absenteeism, which is the habitual pattern of absence from a duty or obligation without a good reason. That's your dictionary definition of absenteeism. But this way, she actually has employees who want to come to work every day. They want to make money for the business, and she's been very, very successful. She also owns another business on the same block called Vesta as well. So she's been really motivational to speak to as somebody who has fully embraced the minimum wage that we have increased. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I've always kept in touch with the business community in St. Thomas and Elgin and Middlesex and London, continuing over the last 7 years, but particularly this last few weeks, other than out there door knocking every day and bumping into folks that own small businesses. I've also had a few discussions with groups. The St. Thomas Executive Association I spoke to 2 days ago for their luncheon, and that's just a group of small business owners that get together and promote each other's businesses, but also talk about the issues. I've had discussions with Talbot Street merchants. I'm down near the old Capitol Theatre building and walking up and down the day. I've been out to the Elmer area talking to the business owners, and just a little bit outside of the area. I've had some discussions with the Elgin General Hospital, and not that they're a business, but the fact that their costs have skyrocketed. Their energy bills have gone over $1 million extra in the last 5 years due to our outrageous hydro rates. But the Elgin General Hospital depends on our businesses to donate to make things happen there. We have so many great projects going on. The expansion that Ken Monteith and Paul Jenkins just finished off, $16 million raised. A good large chunk of that money came from our businesses and small businesses. So I need to connect with them of how their fundraising efforts are doing, what is causing them, and they need a strong business environment here in Elgin, Middlesex, London. And what I'm hearing from business owners is our hydro rates are too high. It's tough to make a go with regulation. And we need a government that listens and makes an environment for investment.
Amanda?
Yep, my job is literally to talk to people who own businesses, so sometimes it's hard to separate out what I've done in the past week and what might have been deliberate for this event. So I guess I do know that last week I attended the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Awards and Recognition Night, which for the first time in I think a long time was in this riding, hosted by the Southwestern Ontario Board. So I had the opportunity there to talk to several people that have manufacturing facilities in this riding, and one out in Rodney that was the keynote speaker and is a fairly strong manufacturer and exporter. I did ask for a tour, and we're going to go out there and do that, but I haven't gone yet. But I was able to talk with several people there about the issues that they're facing. Hydro definitely came up. It was actually part of the president's address that hydro is the biggest issue facing Ontario manufacturers right now, and it's what's keeping manufacturing from growing in Ontario. And that talent attraction is also an issue for some of the places that are doing some heavy engineering and things like that. It's tough to attract some of those people out into the riding to work at those companies. So I have been able to do that and to build on really years of talking with small business owners every single day.
Thank you.
I'll start with Carly on this one, and then we'll work down. One of the biggest issues that I hear from small business owners and business owners of any sort, even homeowners as well too, is hydro rates. Governments of all stripes for years have been trying to get control of hydro, or Hydro One. And the original motto of Sir Adam Beck was hydro at cost. But we know that this is one of the most important components of doing business in the province of Ontario. What is your party going to do, not just in the short term, but in the long term, to provide some stability and clarity to business owners so that they can plan and not have to deal with spikes in hydro rates? So what is your plan going forward to dealing with escalating hydro costs in the province of Ontario?
Thank you very much, Steve, for that question. So I completely acknowledge the concerns over the cost of hydro as someone who lives in an apartment building and pays for their own hydro. The provincial governments, there's some little background here, the provincial government has sold 51% of its ownership of Hydro One. It resulted in a target of $9 billion in gross proceeds that will actually be invested back into Ontario infrastructure, so in cities much like this, unlike when the Conservatives sold the 407. Investments in this infrastructure includes roads, hospitals, schools, public transportation, bridges, and ultimately our communities such as St. Thomas and all those areas within Elgin-Middlesex-London. The province will continue to benefit from the dividends of Hydro One and will actually invest without actually increasing debt, taxes, or cutting any public services. The Fair Hydro Plan, which was newly introduced, has made energy bills 25% lower on average for families and small businesses and farms. And low-income families and those in rural and remote areas are actually seeing decreases as high as 40 to 50%. These figures don't include savings from our Ontario Electricity Support Program. meaning qualifying families are paying even less for their electricity. I would like to see that extended towards small business owners as well. So to top it all up, Ontario families and small businesses are now paying less on average here than in many of other very similar jurisdictions that are very similar to Elgin-Middlesex-London. So thank you.
Thanks for the question. We have one of the highest hydro rates in North America, or one of the top, and that is really deflated investment within our riding. It's also deflated investment throughout Ontario. And one of the main reasons hydro rates have soared is the Green Energy Act, which has signed these expensive contracts for wind and solar for outrageous prices. The Auditor General noted that we spent over $9 billion more in wind and solar than we should have because of the Green Energy Act. So the first thing the Progressive Conservative Party is going to do is end the Green Energy Act. We're no longer going to be signing those contracts. We're going to be taking the dividends we receive from Hydro One and convert those and send them into reduction of rates for people with hydro. So that'll move the conservation costs in hydro rates to general revenue. So that'll reduce the rates down to about 12% at the end of the day. I think at the same time we need to look at the industrial rates. We're going to put in some reforms to stabilize rates for the industry. And so that the businesses wanting to invest in our industry will know they have a plan of action of what the rates are going to be, so they'll be stabilized. You'll hear the NDP's plan coming forward. They want to buy back Hydro One, which is a noble cost. That's going to cost you billions upon billions of dollars. They want to roll back the 25% decrease that the Liberals brought forth, which will cost you over $20 billion. And then they're magically going to reduce rates 30% without a cost. I would like to hear more of the detail of how that 30% is going to come down when considering both the NDP and the Liberals are going to keep this Green Energy Act going, signing these lucrative contracts at the detriment of hydro rates in this province.
I'm very happy to provide more of those details. So with regards to the Green Energy Act, certainly our intention is to revisit those contracts, renegotiate and cancel them where that's appropriate. We have a great energy critic in the NDP, Peter Tabbins, and I've been able to speak with him at length about what exactly is our plan. So I'm happy to provide some details. First and foremost, our plan is to fix the system. It's not enough just to put a little money in here and there. We really need to fix what is a very broken system for delivering energy and buying energy. We'll also expand the OEB mandate to make sure that they're actually charged with the responsibility to ensure ratepayers are getting the best deal that they can. And we'll provide support for trade-exposed industries as we go through this transition to more affordable hydro, and also we'll invest $100 million in making sure rural areas have natural gas, which will help with predictability so that people can plan for their energy consumption. Some of the other things that we're going to do to bring down that cost of hydro is we will get rid of the exorbitant delivery cost. So for rural customers, that'll be about a 15% decrease. Urban customers will see no increase. We're going to get rid of mandatory time of use pricing. So the impact that'll have will depend on how much you use energy during the day, but certainly for businesses, that's been a huge cost that we've really not seen the benefit from that was predicted. We're also going to use the $2.6 billion tax benefit that was given to Hydro One to help ratepayers during the transition. So that's about a 3.2% decrease. And we're going to remove the HST permanently from hydro and advocate for the federal government to do the same thing. It's a necessity that shouldn't be taxed that way. And yes, we'll buy back Hydro One using dividends from Hydro One, so it won't cost billions of dollars. It'll take a while, but that's why we have to get started now.
All right. The Green Party recognizes the immense cost savings that could be worked by ending our reliance on nuclear, which is a very expensive source of power. We could save over $1 billion per year by closing the Pickering nuclear station on schedule and then replacing the power that's generated by Pickering and stations similar, so not to make any future investments in nuclear, by purchasing low-cost hydro from Quebec. It's at a fraction of the cost, therefore we can easily provide that power to our businesses and to our residents at a much lower rate. We're not in favor of trying to get our ownership interest back in Hydro One. It's just too much money. We wouldn't mind getting a controlling interest back, but buying the whole thing back is just not something that is in the budget for us. Ultimately, the savings that could be worked by ending our reliance on expensive nuclear, we would like to put into a green building and business program. So ultimately, giving people the money that they need and giving businesses the money that they need to retrofit their businesses and buildings to make sure that they're more energy efficient and also working, so you'll experience savings in that way as well.
Great. Moving on, and I'll likely come back to hydro at some other point, but let's see how many other questions we can get in. We're in St. Thomas, but Elgin-Middlesex-London represents a great rural swath of southern Ontario, and so just talking from in rural Ontario, and also inclusive of businesses, we can't use transit in Elgin County. I've checked. There's no subways under some of those cornfields. And from a straight business point of view, I can't ship goods any way but in a truck from St. Thomas. So we use gasoline for our cars and trucks as our method of transit in rural Canada. Across this country and certainly across this province, that is transit, to get to school, to get to work, to get to our friends. So good roads are also a piece of the transit here. Currently, the Ontario gas tax only is contributed to transit systems. Almost all of the municipalities in Elgin-Middlesex-London do not get Ontario gas tax except for transit systems. And certainly our farmers would tell you the same thing. They've got to put gas in their tractors in order to grow the food. Why are in most cases gasoline prices and gas taxes continue to rise as a way of making cash and paying off transit systems? And I love the thought, but I don't live in Toronto and I don't have a transit system. So I'd just like your views on it. Jeff, I'm going to start with you and work down.
Thanks, Joe. And you're right. With the gas tax, I think there's only about 3 municipalities, maybe 4, that do receive it for transit, that have a transit system, and the rest of the people in the riding are still paying for gasoline, and unfortunately we're not receiving the benefits. The PC party will be, for rural municipalities, will be returning the funding the Liberal government has cut for OMPF funding and Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund funding back up to its levels. It's an extra $70 million, and believe you, I get calls every year from the local municipalities saying we've been cut again. So what does that happen? That's less money for their infrastructure projects, building the roads and bridges that we need. We need a government that understands rural Ontario. I shouldn't have had to have fought to keep that Glenworth Bridge open for transportation across this riding for our farm equipment. We need a government that understands rural Ontario and knows that what works in Toronto doesn't work here in Elgin-Middlesex-London. PC Party announced yesterday that we will be lowering the gasoline prices by 10 cents a litre by a combination of ending the cap and trade agreement, which has raised costs not only on businesses but natural gas in our homes, every day's cost of life. So, and we're going to lower the provincial tax on the gas. So 10 cents a litre to help people get through their day-to-day travels, because we understand, you're right, there isn't a transit system that runs in Elgin County.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, our Southwestern Ontario platform, which came out recently, acknowledges that gas prices are a big issue. And yeah, in Elgin-Middlesex-London, St. Thomas got about $400,000 of that gas tax, and little other funding went to the riding. So while I do think that the gas tax should continue to support transit, I think we need to look at other ways to support people that can't use transit. We will try to get a clamp on price gouging and price peaks in gas prices, because those are the issues, is when it's unpredictable. There doesn't seem to be any real reason for why the gas price suddenly goes up and comes down overnight. The other thing is investing in natural gas. More and more there's things that you can do with natural gas, so that can help some businesses that are farm businesses, for example, that are relying on gas. And as far as other road infrastructure, we will increase the funding for the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund so that municipalities can better access it and improve their roads and bridges. We'll make sure that the 401 is safe with that barrier between London and Windsor, so that when you're transporting goods there are fewer accidents happening there. And generally, I think that there's a strong commitment to southwestern Ontario and all rural areas where we recognize transit's not an option. We hope someday it will be, but it's not right now. So we need to make sure we're providing relief for people.
Thank you. So the Green Party is looking at some creative ways to fund transit in the urban centers to kind of take the burden off of rural communities. I think that this kind of disconnect between who is funding it and who is getting the benefit of it is one of the things that kind of contributes to this frustrating rural-urban divide that we talked a little bit about in Belmont last night at the agriculture debate. So ultimately, we're looking at things that economists have been recommending for a long time for the larger urban centers like Toronto. For example, implementing more road tolls. So that would be a way to fund their own transit system, and imposing a levy on, I believe it's $1 levy on parking in Toronto. So that is money being spent in Toronto that's going towards the Toronto transit system, kind of taking the burden off of people in places like Elgin-Middlesex who are kind of funding a transit system that they don't really use. In terms of bringing transit to this area, what we would be looking at is the potential for, because clearly we can't sustain in the smaller communities a transit system like Toronto's or even like London's. So we would be looking at potentially working with, the public sector working with the private sector and trying to get private companies to potentially be providing public transit for this area to get the people around. In terms of making sure that we have proper road infrastructure to get our products around, that I talked a little bit about last night as well with the farmers. The goods have to get around. We would like you to be able to sell it locally. So what infrastructure we require to get that product to market and to our tables from the local farmers here is something that I will 100% get behind, and I would be happy to advocate for.
Thank you for your question. So, as a Liberal Party, we actually understand that investing in infrastructure helps maintain a very strong economy and high standard of living, especially in this area. It also helps to increase fairness and create opportunities for all Ontarians. That's why we are investing more than $230 billion in public infrastructure over 14 years in projects like roads, bridges, transit, hospitals, and schools, which also helps to support 125,000 jobs each year. So we're hoping that these investments will actually assist in driving economic development for our businesses, our entrepreneurs, and our agricultural sectors as well. I do believe Jeff mentioned OMPF funding, so that's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, and it's the province's main transfer payment back to municipalities. So in 2018, the province will provide a total of $510 million in unconditional funding to 389 different municipalities. In 2014, under a Liberal government, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund was redesigned to better target funding towards rural communities with challenging fiscal circumstances. In 2018, the province will have fully implemented its commitment to upload social assistance benefits costs from the property tax base as agreed upon with municipalities in 2008. The Ontario Municipal Partnership, OMPF once again, combined with the municipal benefit resulting from the Liberal provincial uploads with more than $2.6 billion in 2018, which is about equivalent to 14% of municipal property tax revenue in the province alone. The Liberal government's commitment to the provincial uploads means that overall support to municipalities will continue to increase. So I'd like to remind you of a time when Mike Harris downloaded all the social assistance services to the municipality, and it's taken us this long to re-upload those. In addition to the gas tax, about it being lowered, cap and trade has brought in about $2 billion in revenue last year, and the gas tax brought in about $2.7 billion. Ford's move could actually cost the province $1.19 billion annually, which would be taken away from our municipalities such as St. Thomas. It'll result in a massive loss in funds that are meant to address local infrastructure, especially for rural communities such as ours that require roads and bridges for distribution of our products. Thank you.
There's a real common theme in the questions that have come in from chamber members that Bob asked its membership to provide, and that's dealing with the fiscal affairs of the province. We know that the number 3 line item in government expenditures is paying down the provincial debt. You need to understand, though, there's only one taxpayer in the province of Ontario. All of your parties talk that you're going to deal with the debt, that you're going to deal with balancing the budget, but that means either cutting services or raising taxes or downloading those costs to local municipalities. What is your party's long-term plan to deal with debt, deal with spending, but do it in a way that it's not just making someone else the bad guy and having to collect the money, i.e. local municipalities? Amanda.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think all of our plans are really about making the decisions that are best for us long term and make the most financial sense long term. It would be wonderful to be able to get rid of the deficit next year. It's just not possible because of the gaps that exist now. We do have a fiscal plan. I think the NDP is currently the only party that has a fiscal plan out, except the Green Party, Brona points out. So our fiscal plan does have a significant reduction in the deficit by year 5, but it's about making those investments up front to fix our systems, whether it's healthcare, education, infrastructure, so that things are more efficient. Actually running the government a little bit the way a business would, which would be to try to direct people toward the things that are most cost effective for taxpayers. We all do pay for it in the end wherever it comes from. When it comes to municipalities, unfortunately, when things get downloaded to them, it's not a progressive tax. You have people that are seniors living on fixed incomes in homes that they've paid for, but their property taxes are going up. They can't afford to be in them anymore. We recognize those problems, and that's why we want to make sure that the province is doing its fair share and not putting an undue burden on. It's not the municipalities themselves, it's the ratepayers in those municipalities, that we are looking at lots of ways to partner with municipalities and make sure that we're funding them adequately through progressive income taxes where that makes financial sense.
Thank you. So I think one of the misconceptions about the Green Party is that it is anti-business or anti-corporation, and we're not. We are anti-irresponsible business, and we're anti-irresponsible corporations, and there is a massive amount of revenue and that could be made available if we were just doing business responsibly. We do have a fiscal plan, as Amanda pointed out, so thank you. And some of the interesting things in this fiscal plan that I don't think you're going to see in other parties' plan, because the Green Party is not we're not anti-business, but we're also not a party that's beholden to business at all. We've never taken corporate donations, and we never will. There is something called the Drummond Report, which apparently came out in 2012, which talks about collecting taxes that are already owed by corporations. So there's a lot of revenue to be had by just collecting the money that the government is already owed. We would impose an income tax increase on the top 1% of earners, of which I am not, and I don't think most of the people watching today are not. So I don't think that is something that's negative. Those people have the money, and that is a massive amount that we could be throwing at the debt from people that afford it. So it's not that we have to hurt the little guy to do this, but we recognize in our fiscal plan that this is something that we do need to do.
Thank you once again for that question. I realize that the Ontario Liberal Party and the provincial government has had a few, criticisms of the debt. But Ontario's economy has actually grown significantly, and the unemployment rate remains very, very low, around 5.5%, which is actually well below the national average. For the past 3 years, Ontario has led all G7 nations when it came to economic growth. We know that not everyone has benefited from this growth per se. We understand that it's felt harder to get ahead and harder to hang on, and that's why the Liberal Party has been investing in free tuition, free prescription drugs, and free preschool childcare for Ontarians. Private sector economists are forecasting that Ontario's growth will outpace the rest of the country over the next 2 years. The Liberal Party has made a deliberate choice to invest in care, so healthcare, senior care, and childcare. As a result of such investments, we have a very small deficit of less than 1% GDP, which is your gross domestic product. If I were to refer to stats from the Ontario Financing Authority, it would tell me that the net debt to GDP will remain consistent over the next 7 to 8 years or so, and will actually continue to decrease. The pattern remains consistent for the accumulated deficit to GDP, and I know there's been a lot of talk around interest rates of the provincial debt. According to the same source, the interest on debt to revenue ratio is the lowest it's been since 1990 and 1991 at 8%. So after briefly balancing the books, the provincial Liberals have developed a plan to create care over cuts in the areas of healthcare, youth, families, seniors, and infrastructure to support a better, more economically diverse and healthier future for Ontarians. So I believe that investments that the Liberal Party is making will actually create a stronger and more economically productive future for Ontario. And that's why I believe in care over cuts.
Thank you. We've had 15 years of Liberal government, which has devastated our economy. We've lost over 300,000 manufacturing jobs, and I counted myself, it's over 6,000 well-paying jobs in Elgin County alone. And in order to help the government keep its books in balance, and we need a strong business climate in this province. And I think the other parties have forgotten this. One party wants to raise corporate taxes, increase regulation, make it harder on business. You get rid of the hydro delivery charge, somebody has to pay that. That's just going to be put in general revenue that we have to find ways to pay for that. The Liberal government says they had a balanced budget. The Auditor General says we're $6 billion in deficit still. So it's going to be a big problem for whoever takes government coming forward. We are going to be running an audit of the entire government. I'll give you a case point. The Auditor General just completed an audit at the end of last year. She looked at 1/20th or 1/30th of the whole government as a whole. She found $1.6 billion in savings, inefficiencies that did not cut services and did not cut staff. We're going to do that for the entire government and work out the efficiency. The government needs to be run like a business with regards to lean management. We have to stop the duplication. We have to stop the waste, and that'll help us bring us into balance, and we can do that. We can't afford to keep piling on the debt. The other parties in this race are promising spend, 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 and that's only increase taxes or increase our debt, which takes more money out of our services. At $1 billion a month, paying down the interest on our debt, that's only going to compound and grow, especially when interest rates start to rise. That has to stop. We need to ensure that we're able to stop running deficits as the other parties will be running in perpetuity, and ensure that the money that is coming in as revenue is spent on the services that we need. PC parties is promising to lower corporate tax rates, reduce regulation, get rid of the cap and trade, which is hurting our businesses, and ensure they have an environment to grow so that the revenue coming into the government from the businesses in the community grows so that we can have a balanced budget and afford the services we need. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to carry on a little bit there from a business point of view and deficit spending. As a small businessman, I recognize I can't deficit spend. My bank closes me the minute I can't pay my loans. So I mean, there may be those that tell me I can run a deficit because it's a loan to the bank. But when I can't pay that, I'm done as a business person. Each of you have said through today about neat new tricks that we're going to find, or neat new gifts we could be giving to Ontario. The answer is who's paying for them, and if you expect it from small business, then I'm going to ask you a couple things that I think small businessmen have asked us to ask you. First of all, could we have some consultation on anything you're going to do that's going to drive the cost up of our businesses? It would seem a natural thing. However, in the last 12 months, that hasn't been the case. My cost has been driven up by almost 50% on things like hydro over the last 5 years, and on wages. And no consultation took place. As a matter of fact, I know the Chamber of Commerce was even told they couldn't attend the roundtable on the labor legislation. We're business people. We pay our taxes. Bronna, you might be right that there's unpaid taxes out there that need to be collected, and I'm the first to say go get them, because I know we pay our taxes, and we're happy to do so. It means we made a profit. All right? But could we please have government ask us when a piece of red tape is going to come forward, it's going to drive costs of my business, when a gift is given by the government to either employees or other layers of cost out there, could you please ask the business people, is it affordable and can it be done? I'd like your comments on that. And I don't know, Bronna, yeah. Thank you, please.
Yeah. I feel this because I'm not a business person, and so you know, for me to talk about our fiscal plan, that is a stretch for me. I leave this stuff to the experts, which are not me. But I feel the pain of being shut out of conversations with the government that I legitimately am an expert in. I have been working for the past year and a half as a bereaved parent and an expert in the law to try and help change a piece of legislation for the better, and I can't get a lawyer to have a conversation with me. It is door after door after door shut in my face. Now I have a platform now, so hopefully after this somebody's going to start listening to me, but I feel your pain. Legislators are not experts in everything, so if we are not listening to the experts in business, then we are not going to be crafting sound business and economic policy. So lots of words to say a very simple yes to consultation.
Thank you for that fantastic question. So I know the Liberal government wants to create the strongest possible economic climate so that small and large businesses alike can actually grow and thrive, especially in our communities. So the Ontario Liberal government has actually brought in $500 million in new initiatives over the next 3 years to support small businesses in Ontario. So one of these is in fact about lowering the small business corporate income tax rate from 4.5% to 3.5%, as well as eliminating the capital tax rate as well. I want to touch on hydro rate cuts as well. I did mention a little bit earlier in this episode that we've actually made energy bills 25% lower on average for families as well as small businesses. So we don't want to penalize small businesses. As well with the minimum wage increase, I personally feel that employees who can actually earn a wage that's closer to a livable wage are actually more productive and cost effective for businesses, including small businesses. So all of that being said, as your hopefully member of provincial government and your MPP, I would actually love to actually hear from more small businesses before we actually create more legislation as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I think definitely the government has moved away from consultation, and you have a guarantee that the Progressive Conservative Party will be consulting with businesses and workers with regards to changes that are made. I think too often policy changes are implemented without going through the unintended consequences. And case in point, the minimum wage increase. Well, we're agreeable of increasing the minimum wage over a longer period of time. The government went forward and is increasing minimum wage by 32% over 13 months. It's unfortunate that that people have had to wait for an increase in the minimum wage, but that was a lot for businesses to take on, especially small businesses. And hearing from businesses in this riding, owners of businesses in Port Borough and Port Bruce have told me they're taking fewer students this year because they just can't afford that increase. Seniors on fixed income, the cost of goods have gone up. They can't adjust their costs of going. If you look at other jurisdictions like California, they took 4 years to raise the minimum wage. We need to ensure. So our PC party is going to have the Treasury Board review all regulations within the business community, weed out the ones that are costly or ineffective so that there's more money flowing for businesses. And going forward, we will get rid of the cap and trade deal, which is not lowering greenhouse gases in Ontario. It's lowering greenhouse gases in California. And the Green Energy Act is skyrocketing costs. We need to lower the costs for businesses so that they can hire more, do more for our communities and grow. That's how they're going to invest, not government downloading costs and regulations on them. Thank you.
Yes, as I mentioned in my opening statement, Andrea Horvath has made it her personal guarantee that there will be no more shocks and surprises. There will be no more changes without consultation, that she'll make sure that businesses are consulted on any changes that impact them. For me, as an NDP candidate, that was very important. I also mentioned I worked with Startup Canada for years. A big part of our role was to create a voice for entrepreneurs and scaling businesses in government, and that's where a lot of our funds that were raised entirely through through corporate support for that mission went to was helping to create that voice. It's very important. I do want to address a little bit the employment standards, because of course the NDP supported very strongly improving our employment standards. When I've talked with people through my own business, through Startup Canada, just in passing, about their feelings on those standards, I've talked with a lot of people who really want to be really good employers, and they feel like they are undercut by people who don't have to be good employers because the legislation wasn't there. So they're at a disadvantage where they feel like they can't compete. So actually creating that legislation that says, listen, everybody's got to be a good employer to this standard, helps those people that want to be, and it creates a regional climate where this is an area with lots of good employers, which helps to attract top talent, people that know they're going to be able to find another good job if this one doesn't work out. It's very important. Thank you.
This question will be starting with Carly. The second largest expenditure in government is education. As well, we pay for education through our provincial taxes, but we also pay for education through our property taxes as well, too. We have 4 school systems in the province of Ontario. Do you support the continuance of 4 school boards, 4 different systems in the province of Ontario, or are you open to looking at some other options?
Thank you very much, Steve. That's actually a fantastic question, and I'm not sure that's something that's actually been visited with all the candidates of the Liberal Party, in fact. But I do know the Liberals take on education, and that's something that we've always invested in heavily, because we know that youth are the future of Ontario, and they're the future of our tomorrow. So it's very important that we invest in our youth. So that's why we've actually put forth free tuition for those who actually come from low and middle income families or backgrounds. It can be adult students as well. And even just this year alone, we've actually sent 235,000 university and college students to school. So I think that's absolutely incredible. And these are the people who will be investing in Ontario for our future. We're also working on opening new doors for people who didn't have the opportunity to go to post-secondary education before, including 13,000 single moms who can actually attend post-secondary for free, which gets more women into the workplace and producing more money as well. But once again, like I've said, we've heavily invested in education, schools, public, high school, and post-secondary school for a very, very long time. In fact, since 2013, we've actually built or renovated 408 schools that our students actually have the best possible learning environment that prepares them, once again, for the workforce and for post-secondary education. So thank you for that question.
Thanks very much, Steve. The PC Party is going to keep consistent with the school system we have today. I feel it gives parents a choice of which avenue they want to take their child down, whether it be in the Catholic or public or the French or system. We are supportive of ensuring that the funding continues to flow to the school. Locally, we've just gone through a review process through the public system, which was closing a number of our schools, and through working with parents to try to stop that procedure, it came down that the process that the school board had created was in error. Municipalities weren't allowed to give their point of view of whether or not the schools were important to the rural communities. So PC Party is going to review that process, because that truly needs to be put in place. We're going to be continuing the moratorium on future school closures, and then we're going to sit down and review the ones that are up for closure in our area on a case-by-case basis, because there's an argument to be made that 2 of the schools, Westminster and South Dorchester, the parent support and community support's shutting them down and building a school in Belmont. I'd like to see a smaller school built in Belmont, just close those schools. And I think it's important to work as hard as we can to keep Springfield and New Sarum open. Springfield is the heart of that community. We can make that system work, and we need the school board to work with us. And I think the Minister of Education can impart that power onto the school board to try and work to find a solution. Excuse me. We need to ensure we have strong school board reps to represent the people there. PC Party will also be redoing the math curriculum to ensure we go back to the older system of math where kids can understand what they're doing in math. And we're going to revamp the EQAO system to make it actually a system that is better for teachers and parents and the bureaucrats to understand what's going on in the school system. Right now, it's a failure, EQAO, and we're going to fix that. Thank you.
Thank you. The NDP supports the constitutional right to Catholic education. What we would like to see is more cooperation between Catholic and public school boards so that where there's overlap, we can create some administrative efficiencies with co-location and things like that, but also so that students have an opportunity to have a better education. In a lot of small towns around the province, we have a small Catholic school and a small public school, and they kind of wait each other out to see who's going to close first, and we don't want to see that happening. So we do want to work with those school boards to try to see more cooperation there. We have a great team on the NDP caucus. It was a caucus. I guess now it's a slate of candidates, including Peggy Sattler, who's our NDP and MPP in London West, and she's served on the TVDSB board, so she has firsthand knowledge of the issues that we face in this board. We will also honor the moratorium on school closures, get rid of EQAO, and I know that the Chamber of Commerce called to some correction to the property tax for education because right now, for no apparent reason, in some areas businesses pay much higher education property tax than other areas. So we will work to continue to equalize that and make sure that it's more fair across the province.
So considering this is one of the few debates that my children will be able to see me at, I have one daughter who is in grade 6 who is studying for EQAO right now, and I want you to know, Ivy, that the Green Party is going to cancel EQAO. So I know that's going to make you very happy, and I'm glad that I was able to let you know about that. From the question, what I'm getting is two things, and the answer to both of those questions is simplify. So the Green Party has had as its policy for a very long time that there is no need for the multiple school boards. We can administer Catholic schools and public schools through one board. So it's not that I think Catholic schools are great schools, but I do think that they could be administered by the same people that are administering public schools. I do not see how we cannot work much cost savings, because the money that goes to education should be going to children and not administrators. The second part of it, though, is because you were mentioning tax, and I spent some time going through the OFA's platform as well for this election, and I was blown away by the complicated property tax system that people who operate farms have to go through. And I'm glad just to have this opportunity to say there is something that needs to be done with all of these multiple tax codes and regulations that you have to navigate if you're a farmer, and that is something I would definitely love to take on.
Well, great. Thank you for that. And it's going quite well, so we'll just keep it going. I am involved also as a small business person, but over my community time here with local employment services. There is a great need to try and match people with certain skills to certain jobs. So this would have a bit of a multi-thing to it. First of all, we have employers representing employers here again at the Chamber of Commerce who continue to say it does not matter who I call, I will not get a qualified candidate sent to me by an employment service. That's their view, of course, but we still have, if we go by the numbers, I chair a local group about this, about 14% of employers using government-funded employment services. That's a very low number considering the amount of money that our provincial government puts into employment services. If I can throw another little wrench into it, please talk to me about skilled trades. We are at a crisis, certainly from a home builder's point of view, but almost all skilled trades, on being able to match skilled trades with employers. So let's go on that one. And I think, Bronnie, you're first on this. I think it's Jeff. Okay, it's Jeff. Good. Thank you all for keeping track, because I'm too busy speaking. Go ahead.
Thanks, Joe. Good question on this skilled trades. I was speaking with Doug Terry about a week and a half ago, and Doug is a developer in our area, building quite a bit out in the southern part of St. Thomas. He said he is so short of skilled trade workers that they have to compete for bricklayers, and they're competing against London for bricklayers. So the cost of building a house escalates because they have to match the price or beat it to get that bricklayer. Many are retiring. The other item that is brought up, I spoke with London Home Builders Association, and the fact that they're moving away from bricked houses because they just can't get the bricklayers. And it's a lot of trades. We need to address the skills trade gap, which is growing. There are a lot of available high-paying jobs out there in the skilled trades that aren't happening. PC Party is going to reintroduce shop programs and trade programs in the high school, so kids get a feeling for it heading into college. So they make that decision. Too often, kids are told by the guidance counselors not to think about the skilled trades. We also think in talking with Doug Terry, which has a great program that Fanshawe College has, is women in the skilled trades. We need to promote that more, because if you want to have a balanced workforce, we need more women in the skilled trades and educate them. PC Party put forth a number of bills in the last 7 years to modernize the apprenticeship system, which is killing the growth of skilled trades. And both times the Liberal and NDP government or parties voted against us, and that would have modernized the apprenticeship system to get more apprentices on the job site. Too often, our young kids are going to Alberta and BC because they can't get an apprenticeship here to stay in our local areas. We need to fix that system so that we can keep people in rural Ontario with high-paying jobs. Excuse me. And PC Party will modernize that system. Thank you.
Yeah, again, the NDP is very keen on education and fixing our education system. So one of the things that the NDP has supported in the past is improving apprenticeships and improving technical education in schools. I know that one of the things that happens is the way that certification for teachers works. It's actually very hard to get teachers certified to teach those things in schools. So that's maybe something that needs to be addressed. It's actually not in the platform, but we'll talk about it, I'm sure, after we're in government. So we will review and reform Employment Ontario programs to make sure that they're working for the modern economy by working with both employers and with the people running those programs. We'll also foster 27,000 new work-integrated learning opportunities, because what we're hearing from people is that students are coming out of school, they're not really properly educated for the actual work, and they're told you need to go get some experience. So we'll foster 27,000 new paid internships and co-op placements, create a fund within the Jobs and Prosperity Fund for mid-career education opportunities, because that's the other thing that happens is as things are changing so quickly, even people who've had experience are finding that when they leave one job, they don't have the skills to move into another job that's expected of them. And I think then the other thing to do is to end the funding freeze on universities that the Liberals have had in place, so that universities are equipped to be able to educate people for our changing economy and for our changing workplaces.
I was having a little trouble finding what our platform policy or our policy was on this issue, because I also brought the I brought the Ontario Chamber of Commerce platform with me as well, and now I have it's exactly the same thing. So that's why, like, this is a kind of a no-brainer for me. In our platform, it says modernize the apprenticeship application process. Modernize the apprenticeship system is in the Ontario Chamber of Commerce platform. So it was hard for me to find it because it's exactly the same thing. And I guess this goes back to, again, being more responsive to the experts in this area and making sure that they're being consulted. So if we need changes to the apprenticeship system, then the people that we need to be talking to are the people that are looking to hire people in skilled trades. And so obviously that's something we're very committed to. And yeah, we could basically just, these policies are pretty much interchangeable. So you can either read the Green Party platform on this, or you could easily just go to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce website, and that's pretty much what you're going to get. It's the same thing.
Fantastic. That's a really good question, especially in our community right here in St. Thomas, Ontario. Jeff did mention the shortage of bricklayers, and I actually know somebody who has been renovating his house, and he's having this issue. So I completely support innovation and technology. We're starting now to get, I guess we've innovated and created technology that actually makes bricklayers that are not human. So it's a different way of thinking in our new world. But I do agree that we do need to address the skilled trades gap as soon as possible. I do come from a very blue-collar family. My father is actually a Class A mechanic, and my mother is a PSW, or a DSW rather. And one of my backups is, honestly, I want to become a welder. Absolutely. But we do need to send youth to school to learn the trades, as well as keep those youth in our communities so they're actually contributing to the economy as well as earning a really good wage. We can do this through investments in public, high school, and post-secondary education, and that's my belief as well as the Liberal Party's belief. We've invested $24.5 billion in education, and this is your public schools, your high schools, and I fully support the push towards programming for the trades. So more shop classes, and we need to destigmatize the trades. We also, again, I do agree with Jeff here, we need to actually push more women into trades, and that's why Fanshawe College has been absolutely stellar. We have also made investments in post-secondary education for both colleges and universities themselves, as well as students who do come from the low and middle income backgrounds. So thank you very much for that question.
Government seems very committed right now to big transportation projects, talking high-speed rail and bus rapid transit in London. Those are big projects, and they're expensive projects. But I want to bring it down to the local level. You know, in the days of the stagecoach, you could get around Elgin County easier than you can now. If we're going to grow communities, bring people into our downtown cores, encourage people to go and explore other parts of Elgin County, everybody doesn't own a car. What is your position on investments of government of broadening municipal transportation systems so it takes it beyond the borders? We live with these artificial municipal borders that the moment you get to Ron McNeil and Highbury, the city bus can't go any further because it's a different municipality. We need the government to step in and come forward with a plan to help create regional transportation. And would be very interested in hearing from you, Amanda, your thoughts on, yeah, the big projects are out there. Some of those big projects will be advantageous to me, but I'm also concerned about what's going on in my own backyard.
Transit is one of my favorite topics. I've been a transit advocate for a while, and I'm an advocate for more people being able to use it, partly because I think it's an environmentally friendly option, but because some people don't have the choice. So I've talked with people in this county who have foregone cancer treatment because it'll cost too much for them to get to a hospital. I've talked with people who hitchhike to work every day, things like that. We want to create options for those people. So our Southwestern Ontario plan does include creating a regional transportation strategy for this area, something that does connect all of Southwestern Ontario and making sure that it's coordinated, because it is an issue when you're moving between sort of a hodgepodge of private and public people that are offering transit. You can't just get one ticket. You can't book that whole trip in one place. It's a real issue for people. If transit's not easy, it's still not accessible. So we do have a plan to create a regional transit system that's well coordinated, and also to fund 50% of municipal transportation operating costs. The gas tax fund provides a little bit of capital funding, but buying a couple buses doesn't help you if you can't run them anywhere. Then they're just sitting in a garage. So the province used to fund 50% of municipal transit costs for operating, and for whatever reason they stopped. The NDP will restore that funding so that places like St. Thomas can grow their system. Other municipalities that I've talked to who want to introduce transit can do that with a little more freedom. And I think personally, I'd love to see more people using transit. Thank you.
Something interesting that I learned the other day when I was having a conversation with a fellow from the City of London is that all of the routes that are between the smaller communities here and the bigger cities are actually owned by different private companies, and so they have like the exclusive right to put a bus on these routes, and a lot of them just don't bother putting a bus on them because it's not financially beneficial for these people. So ultimately they have these contracts into perpetuity to put a bus on these routes, and then they just don't put the bus on there. That kind of says to me that the government needs a new lawyer, which is something that I can bring to the table. But in any event, so I mentioned a little bit before about looking at partnering with private companies to make sure that transit is available in smaller communities where it's just not sustainable to have a big public transit system. And something that and specifically because somebody mentioned, I think it was Amanda that mentioned healthcare, was we wanted to dedicate specific funding for people who do not have access to healthcare in their communities to make sure that they get to the bigger centers to access healthcare. So there's a specific part of our platform that addresses that issue to make sure people have access to healthcare. And one thing that I don't think anybody else is going to talk about today is a specific funding stream dedicated towards when we are building new highways or resurfacing any existing highways to make sure that there are safe bike lanes on all of those new and existing roadways. So there's another way to get people around that I don't think most people are thinking about right now, but it is extremely important to get people moving.
All right, thank you very much for that question. As someone who has lived in St. Thomas for all their life, I completely agree that our public transit is not quite up to snuff, and it's not good enough to get those who actually need to get out and socialize, such as seniors and youth, and get active. It's not enough. It's not enough to do the job it needs to do. So that's why the Ontario Liberal government has set up initiatives such as cap and trade and the gas tax. So a few little facts about the cap and trade. It's actually projected to generate about $1.9 billion per year in proceeds. And Ontario will actually reinvest this into programs that will help save homeowners energy and money, as well as it goes back into projects that help reduce greenhouse gas pollution, such as public transit. So I'd actually love to see maybe more of that money come our way and go towards our public transit because of our demographics of St. Thomas itself, as well as those within Elgin-Middlesex-London. We need to get these people out and active so they can live their best healthy lives. The gas tax as well, sorry, the gas tax will actually bring in $2.7 billion, and it comes directly down to municipalities as well. This is also why the Ontario government has actually formally announced the process for building a high-speed rail system for southwestern Ontario. It is a linkage that creates a much faster link than the 401 between London and Toronto, and hopefully one day it will go from Windsor to London to Toronto, making stops along the way. So the Ontario Liberal budget has actually provided an $11 billion investment for Phase 1, so that's your connection between London and Toronto by 2025. Thank you very much for your question.
Thanks, Steve. I've had this conversation with the different mayors throughout Elgin County, and their number one call to the government is stop pulling the services out of our area, whether it's a Service Ontario out of the smaller municipalities, or here in St. Thomas where they pulled the ODSP office into London. Seniors have to go to London to get their written driver's test, which I've advocated for a change. We need to keep the services in rural Ontario, not all shift them to urban to create this transit crisis. However, I agree with Brana. It's the Ontario Transportation Board that looks over the licenses for bus operators, and Greyhound has the operation in this area, and they won't run a bus because it's not feasible. They don't have the ridership program. And it's quite convoluted, but I think there's only one or two board members, and it's the last bit of this transit board that its last role it has. It used to decide how many commercial trucks are on the road, but they don't do that anymore. And I think it's modernized this to see if we can open that up, because municipalities driving from St. Thomas to a London bus, technically they'd have to stop at the border and switch to the municipality of London's bus. They can't go over. It's against the rules. With the increase of OMPF funding that we're giving the area, I'd like to see the mayors who are going to have to drive this come together as Elgin County with St. Thomas, come up with a transit system that could be funded through the OMPF, and then that would let them get the provincial gas tax, which the Progressive Conservatives aren't going to lower for any municipality. They'll get the same amount, and they can use that to run the transit system. And in addition, for healthcare, I'm going to continue advocating for a dialysis unit at the Elgin General Hospital. It's ridiculous that our seniors and those on dialysis have to find some route of transportation to go to London. I've been in contact with Cancer Care Ontario regional area, which runs the dialysis, and I'm going to work forward to ensure this happens. Thank you.
Great. My turn again. I'm going to go back to hydro because I said I would. You know, and I have questions here from other business people from the Chamber of Commerce. Certainly, I can speak anecdotally of my own. My utility cost to run my businesses is more than 100% more than it was 5 years ago. And you would be hard pressed to find a business person out there that won't tell you that's the case. Our neighboring jurisdictions, Michigan, Ohio, Quebec, Manitoba, all have hydro less than us. So the first question is, how is that possible? What have we done wrong to drive hydro costs or electricity costs in Ontario higher than our neighboring jurisdictions? The question that I was asked by one of our members was, we sell hydro to those jurisdictions at a reduced rate when we overproduce, which seems to be a lot. Can we just sell to local Ontario businesses at that same reduced rate instead of selling it to our competitors? And why wouldn't that make sense? Ronna?
It makes 100% sense. It's right in our platform as well. One of the things that happened when the minimum wage came in last, I think in January, was that there ended up being this problem with, especially in particular, small businesses kind of pitted against their employees. It's not that the small businesses don't want to pay these people what they need to get by, but ultimately they're put in the same position that consumers are in. Do I choose between my employees or paying my bills? And consumers are in the same position. I choose between eating or buying my medicine and paying my hydro bill. So that is insane. We have been advocating for a long time for this thing called the basic income guarantee, and that obviously is going to have costs for businesses. In particular, it's going to hit small businesses hard. So it is right in our platform that this surplus hydro that we are selling off to other people should be provided to businesses first, and that's going to offset the costs of implementing a living wage for everybody. Because I 100% agree with you, that doesn't make any sense. And again, it kind of goes back to the fact that how did these contracts get in the first place? This is Law 101, and I don't really understand how this could have happened other than the fact that there has to be some kind of corporate interest involved, and we as the Green Party have never taken corporate money and will never be ruled by corporations.
All right, that's a fantastic question. I realize that hydro is a very contentious issue, and I respect that. Again, the Liberal Party has actually attempted to make bills 25% lower for average, again, for families, businesses, farms, and those in rural communities will actually see a decrease as high as 40 to 50%. Just to rehash, we also have the cap and trade program, and it helps with the provincial government for reinvesting up to nearly $2 billion a year in green projects, which will actually help offset a lot of the cost of hydro. So, for example, here's just some of the breakdown that I have right here. So, $100 million in home retrofits to help reduce energy bills and cut emissions. Once again, saving our taxpayers money. $200 million in new windows, lights, and furnaces in public schools to improve energy efficiency and lower emissions. $64 million to improve energy efficiency and redirect savings into patient care at hospitals. $82 million for energy efficient repairs and retrofits for social housing units, with another $575 million to come. $100 million in businesses of all sizes to encourage new clean tech and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And $20 million to build fast charging electric vehicle stations across the province. The Liberals have a plan to help reduce hydro rates by switching over to green energy through retrofits and through new technologies. Rona did mention a little bit about the basic income pilot, and the Liberal government has been the first to actually introduce the basic income pilot over 3 years, and it was launched in Hamilton, Brantford, and Brant County, Thunder Bay, and surrounding area. And so far, it's actually been extremely successful in kind of offsetting some of the cost of some of our social assistance programs. So thank you very much for your question.
Thanks for the question. Due to the Green Energy Act that was put forth by the Liberal government, supported the NDP, we've been signing numerous contracts at high cost for wind and solar of energy we do not need, because this government has devastated our manufacturing industry. The energy needs are not there to this day. And what happens is we're overproducing the energy and having to sell it off at a loss to our competitors. We're helping the economic development of Michigan and New York and Ohio, and that has to stop. So the PC government's going to end signing green energy contracts, the only party that's committed to doing so. And that will help stop the huge growth in hydro costs, especially with businesses and industry where the global adjustment charge makes up for that difference. And you'll notice that some of those businesses, the global adjustment cost is more than their hydro costs. And that's going to stay there until we get this Green Energy Act under control. Cap and trade is nothing but an additional cost to all businesses. The Auditor General pointed out that over $2 billion gets sent to California because they have all the credits. It lowers the greenhouse gas in California, not in Ontario. But under this agreement between Quebec, Ontario, and California, Ontario can claim that as a success. That's totally wrong to be doing that. It's nothing but additional cost to businesses and at the end of the day to people at home. So the PC party will end the cap and trade program, the only party to do so. We're going to go after the Hydro One salaries and ensure they're reined in. Using our majority of shares because we don't need to be having them continually giving themselves raises. As 2 days ago, the board of directors again gave themselves another raise. It's ridiculous. So we're going to lower rates another 12% on top of what the Liberals have done to help deal with the cost of living, not only for businesses, but for individuals throughout the riding.
I think the biggest answer to what have we done wrong is the privatization of Hydro One, which the people of Ontario were, as far as I could tell, overwhelmingly opposed to. So the NDP is the only party that has a plan to start buying back Hydro One. The Liberal scheme to keep hydro prices a little lower for now, which is supported by the Conservative Party, is predicted to have them jacked up about 70% within a couple years after this election. It's not a great long-term solution. Buying it back is a good long-term solution. We also want to do some things. You mentioned Manitoba. How come their energy is so much cheaper? In Manitoba, they cap their private profit margin at cost plus 3%. Here it's 5.5%. We want to make it cost plus 3% here as well and do that through the Ontario Energy Board. And in general, give the Ontario Energy Board some of its teeth back and the ability to work for ratepayers. We also do want to look at capping public sector salaries, not just in Hydro One across the board, but certainly within Hydro One. And then the other question that was asked was, can't we just sell this extra energy to business? And unfortunately, the technical system that manages how we ship energy around is really broken. Ontario Power Generation has indicated that the next couple years would be a great time to fix it because they actually predict stability. So again, we've looked at taking the time to fix it for the long term.
I spent 12 years at Queen's Park. I had a unique opportunity to see the House from three sides: 4 years in opposition, 4 years in government, 4 years as Speaker. One of my observations was it's a place that opposes for the sake of opposing and supports for the sake of supporting. There's not a lot of cross-the-aisle discussion and how can we find common ground to do what's best for the taxpayers of Ontario. If you were elected as the MPP for Elgin-Middlesex-London, are you going to Queen's Park to be a yes person to do what the corner office and the unelected staff in the corner office tell you to do? What kind of representative are you going to be at Queen's Park for us?
All right, thanks, Steve. That's actually a really fun question, especially being the youngest person at this table right here. I know a lot of youth have a really hard time picking and choosing which party they most belong to, and I realize that no party is 100% perfect either. And I respect that. I just chose the party that fits me the best, and that's how I act. That being said, I want to be on the ground listening to people, and I believe in collaboration. Like as we're sitting across this table right now, bits and pieces of everyone's party platform actually make a lot of sense. And I realize that I talk a lot about the Liberal perspective on everything, but that doesn't mean that I don't disagree, or it doesn't mean that I disagree with a lot of stuff as well. So I think collaboration is really the key for the future of government in Ontario. That's just kind of my take on it. And I think that's just a very youthful, kind of a millennial take on government. We want to pick and choose the pieces that we like the most. So absolutely, I want to be that person who listens and then makes an informed decision. And that's just how I've always been. Back at Fanshawe College when I was president, I always liked making an informed decision. So thank you very much, Steve, for that question. I really enjoyed that one.
Thanks, Steve. I'm at 7 years opposition, and I'd love to taste a little bit of government to see what it's like. I think my record speaks for itself. I have brought forth every single issue come to my office, whether it be somebody who supports the Green Party, the NDP, the Liberal, the Freedom Party. I've brought those issues to Queen's Park, to the right minister to discuss, because I'm a representative of everyone in this riding, because my heart and soul is making Elgin-Middlesex-London the best place to live in Ontario and in the world. I think it's the heart of Canada right now. We want to make it somewhere where you want to invest and raise your kids and make it strong and sustainable. you look at my private members bill with Ted McMeekin, Liberal, former Liberal cabinet minister, and Franz Jelena, the NDP health critic. We worked together to create the Lung Health Act. So I am reaching out to both sides of the party to make a difference and make the change. We're always going to have differences in ideology and policy going forward. But I do have a great relationship with both sides of the House. Otherwise, I couldn't have talked to Helena Jadzik face-to-face to get that funding for the women's shelter. I couldn't have talked to Eric Hoskins, who's the Minister of Health, to stop them from closing down the Psychiatric Survivor Network here in Elgin County. You got to have those relationships. We can debate, and you've seen it as Speaker, how bad it can get. But I have forged those ties. I want to continue working with it, and everybody's voice here in Elgin-Middlesex-London with me gets to the floor of the legislature or to the right minister.
I think the worst impact of what you're talking about is that I certainly hear people are very cynical about government. I know at the doors and other places I hear people say things like, it doesn't matter who I vote for, you're all a bunch of crooks, things like that. People are very cynical about government, and we need to restore people's hope that their government can be forward-thinking and accountable, and the NDP is really committed to that. In our platform, we've said that we want to create a strong MPP code of conduct, make sure it's written in plain language and it's regularly updated so people know the kind of behavior and cooperation and collaboration that they can expect from their MPPs and that they can hold them to. And certainly it's something that I look forward to. I've been very lucky with the NDP to be in a party that really values empowering their MPPs and giving them freedom. So I talk to some people running in other parties and I tell them the day after I was nominated, I had a message saying, what's important to your riding? What do you want to see for small business? And they can't believe that the NDP asked me as a just nominated candidate what I wanted. I had the opportunity to give a lot of input into our Southwestern Ontario plan, as did our other candidates. And I think that's something going forward that the NDP won't just allow, but expects from their candidates, is that they're working across parties for their riding. And so definitely that's something that I intend to do.
Well, I think as a Green Party person, I can speak on behalf of my colleagues in the Green Party that we're kind of the masters of cooperation. We have never formed the government, we've never formed the minority, but we do have Greens sitting in BC, and we do have Greens sitting in PEI, and we've had Elizabeth May sitting in Ottawa now for a couple of terms. And so clearly we would have no impact on any kind of policy unless we had the ability to work with other people, because that's the only way we can bring about the changes that we know are necessary, and I think pretty much everybody knows are necessary in the long term. Maybe they're just not quite ready to make the leap that we want to make. I think the way that government is done for me is one of the main reasons that I run as a politician, because I sincerely want to be an example of what a politician can be. Now, I can get upset about stuff because there's a lot of things that I feel very passionately about, but if I cannot speak to my colleagues with respect and manners and decency, then I am a bad politician. I really hope that people can take from this election and what I said earlier about the candidates that I am running with this time, that there is a way to do politics differently. There is no need to master the snarky comment to be a decent politician. Good people who are nice, who are decent, who have empathy, are so put off by politics, and you are exactly the voices that politics needs. So please think about standing up next time, and I will get behind you, because you are the person that we need at this table next time.
Great. I guess I should use the microphone. Fantastic. I'm not often told I need to. We have touched on almost all of the business-related questions that were sent to me, except for one, and it has to do with housing. It has to do with even here in rural southern Ontario, we're starting to feel the crunch on whether young people will ever be able to afford a home, whether we can build enough homes for them if we need them. And we talked a bit about skilled trades and how that's affecting it. Can I have you each speak to housing and the affordability of housing and what your government, what your party if it forms government, would do to help address that issue? And I'm lost again as to who's next. I think it's Jeff. Jeff.
Thanks very much, Joe. I have mentioned the fact that we're going to fix or modernize the apprenticeship system, so we have more plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, drywallers, framers, etc., so that people like Doug Terry or Hayho Homes, Don West can build their houses at a lower cost for people to open up the opportunity to purchase your first home or your second home. We also are going to be going through, again, regulation and red tape that is in the system that makes it harder for a developer to start building here in Elgin-Middlesex-London, or the processes they have to go through to ensure that houses get started and at the end of the day don't have to download those costs down to the system. PC Party is also committing $3.8 billion to mental health, addictions, and housing. And we're going to tailor the housing part of the system for low-income housing to make it flexible to the needs of the area. Too often it's a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter model, and the government tells you how you have to do the housing. We want to listen to the people here. We'll provide the funds, and they'll make best use of those dollars to help low-income folks. And again, we're going to reduce the cost of living in this province, and that is going to free up more money in people's pockets so they can invest more and or have the opportunity after they get a well-paying job, because the PC Party is going to bring back jobs to this province, and they'll have the funds to purchase that home and grow a family and enjoy life here in Elgin-Middlesex-London.
I think that definitely land speculation has become an issue. I know I sit on a committee in the City of London with developers, and what they're saying is all the lots there are sold, but they're not building on them. And so what's happening is they're encouraging people to buy further out from London, and that's driving up prices for people that aren't necessarily actually interested in being an active part of the community. So what we want to see is homes that are affordable for people that really want to live in these communities. So definitely we want to crack down on land speculation. We also want to make sure that home buyers are protected, that young people who want to buy a home have some new avenues to be able to pursue that in a more affordable way, and make sure that also renting is a better option for people, because some people, frankly, with our changing economy, they're not planning to stay in a job forever, they're not sure what they're going to do, they don't want to buy a house, they want to be able to rent, and they want that rental to be a real home. So we want to look at tenants' rights and make sure that people have the same kinds of protections to ensure that they have a safe, healthy, affordable home renting as they do when they buy. And as far as helping people to get into housing, I think increasing affordable housing and supportive housing is also one way to do that for a certain segment of the population. And what the real goal is to make sure that we have communities of people that want to be active.
Thanks very much. So Amanda touched on this a little bit. I think our policies are quite similar, the Green Party and the NDP, on imposing a penalty or a tax or whatever, a levy on land speculation, so to make sure that we do not have people coming in, buying up properties, and then not putting housing that we need on the properties. Obviously, this will benefit those people who need homes, but it will also benefit it has benefits for making sure that we're not taking over, we're not urban sprawl, like it's not taking over prime agricultural land. So we want to keep the density in the communities as opposed to spreading out and taking over lands that we clearly need to feed our residents. A tax on vacant land in the downtown core of large urban centers as well. So these are ways to discourage people from leaving these places that we need to be housing people sitting vacant. We want to advocate for working with municipalities to see if we can do something about some zoning regulations, to see if we can move forward with respect to alternative forms of housing like basement suites, things like that. And in terms of people being able to access the funds to actually buy their first home, we can go back and talk about the basic income guarantee. We want people to have enough money to buy the place or rent the place that they need to live, because we do believe housing is a right.
All right, once again, thank you for your question. So we know that a lot of young people are worried that they won't actually be able to afford their own apartment or be able to purchase their own home. That is a very millennial statement to say, especially from someone of my age. So while a strong housing market was actually reflective of Ontario's strong economy, we know that affordability is actually a real and growing concern, and we see that every day in St. Thomas alone, never mind the rest of Elgin-Middlesex-London. So with the rising cost of housing making more and more people insecure about their future, we decided to actually take action. So the Liberal Party has decided to take action. And we actually introduced something called the Fair Housing Plan, and it helps to stabilize the market for home buyers as well as for renters. We created 16 measures for people who are making buying and renting a home more affordable and fair. We've also expanded rent controls to help protect people against sudden dramatic rent increases that ends up driving people out of their homes. So we're actually capping the rental increase at 2.5% per year, along with the creation of a standard lease, which will protect renters from unfair practices. The Liberal government is actually very clearly invested in creating a housing market that is more affordable and fair for those people who want to go out and have a roof over their head or want to buy their first home or just have the need to rent. Everyone else around the table also has some really great ideas, but we've actually put this plan into action. Thank you.
Carly, thank you for your response there. It's my turn as moderator to jump back in and tell you we're approaching the end, but we're also approaching a surprise. I did not describe to any of you in our advance release information how the program was going to end. If you're elected, you're going to be expected to know how to dance and dance on the spot quickly. I have 2 minutes for each of you to give closing remarks, and I want you to answer a question that to me is perplexing within our system. We're being asked as voters to cast a vote for an individual locally. We're also being asked to cast a vote for a party provincially, yet we only get one vote. In part of your summary response to me, tell me how I make up my mind and tell me why I should vote for you. I'll throw the order of response back to the exact reverse of where we started. So I'm going to ask Amanda to start. I'll follow with Jeff. Then we'll go to Carly and then to Brona. Amanda, it's all yours.
Thank you. I thought I was actually going to get to dance, but this is okay too. So I do think that your local candidate matters. I mentioned at another debate, your first checkbox should be, is this a good person? Is this someone that I want to be able to bring my concerns to? Someone who I think is going to take those where they need to go. That's a great first checkbox, and I think that that is met with everybody sitting at this table today. And then you do need to look at what are the policies that that person's going to be advocating for on your behalf, and what is the party. So it is a bit of a balancing act, and I know that for some people it's a really tough one. I think we're lucky in this riding because we have 4 good people who check that first box. So now look at what's coming after that. And the NDP platform is one that's really strong on business. It's been informed by consultation with business and by people in our candidate panel that are business owners and have been involved with business. It's about making sure that Ontario is an affordable place that's really friendly to business, and it recognizes that small business is the real backbone of the Ontario economy, that's where we need to be putting our support, and that we need to be helping those small businesses grow because they provide a disproportionate amount of the jobs, and in our changing economy, all signs point to the fact that they will continue to provide the most jobs across the province, certainly in Elgin-Middlesex-London. So I think that the NDP offers the best plan for those entrepreneurs, even freelancers, people that have a small company that they want to grow, that they want to create employment, they want to be good employers. I think that you've got 4 great candidates that you can choose from, and one party that's got a great plan to help you grow your business in Elgin-Middlesex-London.
Thanks, Bob. And sorry I've been breathless. I've had a little bit of asthma in the last hour, so we keep running out of breath here. Listen, I think it's very important to look at your local rep. If you look at party platforms, that gives the direction the leader is going to take over the next 4 years. That's the roadmap to how they're going to govern the province. But once you get into government, a whole host of issues arise that has nothing to do with any of the platforms going forward, and that's when your local member matters. That's when you need to do with local issues and bring them to the floor at Queen's Park. For 7 years, I've been a strong voice for this region. I hope you'll let me be a strong voice for an additional 4 years. And I'll tell you right now, I have a strong voice within caucus, well respected, and the concerns of Elgin-Middlesex-London are heard every week, and sometimes our platforms and policies are changed relative. I'll give you an example. Hunting and fishing regulation, license fees go to a special purpose account. This government has not been transparent and open, close to $1 billion over 15 years. Because of local hunters and anglers in this riding telling me about this issue, I brought that issue up at the Queen's Park, had a bill to change it. It didn't get passed. I worked within the party. It's now part of our platform. So I can make things happen with regards to this, and that's why you need to look at your local representative. The leader, all four leaders probably have their warts and their good parts, but they're following their plan of action, and the PC party's plan is to make Ontario open for business again, lowering taxes, lowering costs, getting rid of the cap and trade, decreasing the gas by 10 cents a litre, personal income tax decreases. We're going to invest $3.8 billion into mental health housing and addiction, 15,000 long-term care beds in the next 5 years, a senior dental plan. We have the plan for all of Ontarians throughout this province, not just Toronto. Thank you.
Carly.
All right, so thank you once again for the invitation today. I had a lot of fun. It was really great discussing local business issues. So once again, my name is Carly Forsyth, and I'm your provincial Liberal candidate for the riding of Elgin-Middlesex-London. So again, I'd like to extend my thanks to the St. Thomas and District Chamber of Commerce for having me here today. But I really want to leave you with a key message. It is youth matter, and they are worth fighting for. We believe in investments such as an increased minimum wage to help bring the minimum wage closer to a livable wage, OHIP Plus for both youth, 25 and under, as well as seniors, 65 and over. And that's 4,400 different prescription medications that will be covered. We believe in investments in infrastructure and business, and especially small business and entrepreneurship, as they are really the economic drivers of our province and our nation, as well as free tuition for those who need it. And these are all issues that are at risk in this election. And that's actually why I'm here today, because I actually believe personally in care over cuts. Which is also why you should check my name on June 4th if you do believe also in care over cuts. Because we care about our youth, we care about our families, we care about our children, and we care about our seniors because we take care of our own in this community. So we are the future of Ontario and our nation, and we understand what is at risk in this election. And once again, that is actually why I'm fighting for what I believe in here today, as well as all the way through until June 7th. So once again, my name is Carly Forsyth. I'm your provincial Liberal candidate for the riding of Elgin-Middlesex-London, and I am ready to lead and ready to listen because Elgin-Middlesex-London matters. And Queen's Park needs to know this because it's not just about Toronto. I'm a well-respected member of our community as well as within the Ontario Liberal Party, so they will listen. So once again, thank you very much for your time.
There is it's really hard to kind of think of the difference between me and the Green Party. The Green Party is, the way the Green Party wants to run Ontario is the way that I run my life. So being a part of it's almost impossible to separate the two for me. We're big picture thinkers. We think long term. We think about consequences. We're conservative in terms of not wanting to waste things, but we're kind of really progressive in terms of the way that we look at a kind of an umbrella approach to making sure that people are taken care of, making sure that we can have a prosperous economy, but at the same time looking after our planet. So kind of separating the two would be a difficult thing for me to do. So I guess you have to be all in with both of us. Now, I have no illusions about my wonderful chances for becoming your next MPP. This will be my 4th election that I've been involved in. I ran earlier in the 2000s in London North Centre, and these are in the last 3 years, this is my 2nd election here in Elgin-Middlesex-London. So I, like my beloved Buffalo Bills, have no doubt that there's going to be a tough 4th time something I'm going to have to deal with in the middle of June. And so I just want you to know that I'm confident, like the Bills, that I can survive this and that I'm going to come back and I'm going to be in this game again. And you can count on me to always be behind the people of Elgin-Middlesex-London, because I absolutely love this riding. This is the community I want to fight for. This community represents Ontario, and just please read the platform, because you already are green on the inside. You just don't know it yet.
Brona, thank you for bringing the NFL to the table. If you've got any words of wisdom for me, the Lions fan, then please, we'll talk later. Time for closing. It's hard to believe we have completed 2 hours. My thanks, very sincere thanks, to my colleagues and friends, Joe Preston and Steve Peters, for agreeing and accepting the invitation to participate in what is a meaningful process. I can't agree with you both more when you say the value in participation is getting out and voting. To the four of you, Amanda, Jeff, Carly, Brona, thank you for doing what you're doing. You do deserve votes and praise for being willing to stand up and get involved. If more people would do so, we would be a better place. To our colleagues at Rogers, and to my friend Adrian Peters, who has been managing and doing the audio and all of the handling, A&M Sounds gets a plug here. Thank you for putting it all together. That wraps our show. On behalf of the St. Thomas and District Chamber of Commerce, I'm Bob Hammersley. Thank you very much for making this possible.